A female officer suspects a black woman is texting a drug dealer and plants drugs on her to make the accusation stick. But little does she know, this will be the biggest mistake of her life. Before we begin the story, I'd love to know where you're sharing it from and what time it is. Feel free to leave a comment. It was a late afternoon and the last rays of the sun were slowly fading, casting a golden hue across the sky. Alicia Turner sat comfortably in her luxurious Mercedes, parked along the side of the road, with no intention other than texting her husband about the upcoming dinner. Little did she know, in just a few minutes, her peaceful life would be turned upside down. She smiled as she received a message from him. "What do you want for dinner tonight?" Alicia glanced at her phone, typing out a simple yet cozy response with a few meal suggestions. Everything felt normal, peaceful, like any other afternoon. But in the moment she was enjoying this tranquility, a figure appeared. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence. Alicia looked up and noticed a police patrol car pulling up behind her Mercedes. A female officer stepped out of the car and walked toward her. She moved with a determined gait, as though she had a clear purpose, her eyes filled with suspicion. Alicia felt a slight unease, but she didn't think much of it, still assuming everything would be fine. Surely there was nothing serious going on. Officer Rachel Scott, a stern-looking cop, stopped in front of Alicia's car and immediately spoke. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was cold, unfriendly. Alicia was slightly surprised. Before she could respond, Officer Scott continued, her piercing gaze unwavering. "Are you texting your drug dealer?" "What?" Alicia couldn't believe her ears. She quickly lowered her hand from her phone and looked at Officer Scott, her voice betraying her confusion. "I'm just texting my husband about dinner. There's nothing unusual going on." Officer Scott didn't reply. Instead, she just stood there, staring intently at Alicia as if she were looking for something. Alicia could feel the officer scrutinizing her, as though she were some dangerous criminal. "No," Officer Scott said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You might not be doing anything wrong, but I don't trust you. You know, not everyone can dress like you and drive a fancy car while texting your husband." Alicia was taken aback, not knowing what to say. The feeling of injustice began to rise within her, but she couldn't believe this officer was suspecting her just because of her skin color and the car she was driving. "You don't mean to be racially biased, do you?" Alicia asked, her voice cool but challenging. Officer Scott didn't back down. In fact, she became even more resolute. "I received a report about a stolen bicycle from an elderly woman in this neighborhood. And you fit the description of the thief perfectly," Officer Scott said, her eyes still fixed on Alicia. "I see you parked here with this car, wearing that expensive Gucci jacket, texting as if nothing's wrong. Why are you here, doing nothing at all?" The officer continued to make judgments, completely unfounded, but making Alicia feel like she was being pinned into a criminal role she never fit. This strange feeling made Alicia feel cornered, like she was being judged for something she hadn't even done yet. Alicia tried to stay calm, but the suffocating tension in the air made it impossible not to react. "Really? You think I'm stealing a bicycle? Can't you see what I'm doing? I'm not doing anything wrong." Officer Scott ignored Alicia's explanation. She kept pressing. "Then why have you been sitting here so long? And do you realize how suspicious it looks for a luxury car to be parked here with no reason at all?" Alicia couldn't stop thinking about the harsh reality unfolding in front of her. This wasn't the first time she'd faced racial discrimination. But today, things were even worse. This officer wasn't just judging her because of her skin color. She was using her power to hurt her. Alicia sat in her Mercedes trying to stay calm, though the growing unease in her stomach was hard to ignore. She couldn't believe this officer that was so blatantly abusing her power. But just when she thought she might be able to navigate the situation smoothly, Officer Scott showed no signs of backing down. Officer Scott walked toward the back of the car, still holding a gaze full of suspicion. She stood right next to it, peering inside as though looking for something. "You don't have a warrant to search my car, do you?" Alicia tried to speak, hoping her words would make Officer Scott stop. But the officer only scoffed. "A warrant? What warrant? You think I need a warrant to search a potential criminal? Do you know where you're parked? Are you aware that there have been a lot of bicycle thefts in this area over the past few weeks?" She shrugged as if that was a strong enough reason to pin all the blame on Alicia. Alicia began to feel dizzy. Every word from the officer felt like a knife stabbing into her confidence. "I'm just sitting here texting my husband about dinner. There's nothing shady about it," she patiently explained. But clearly, her explanation wasn't convincing this officer. Officer Scott looked at her with a mocking expression, walking to the back door of the car. "You think I'll believe you? There's definitely something you're hiding in here. You may wear that Gucci jacket and drive this Mercedes, but that's just a disguise. You can't fool me," she continued, her tone full of judgment. "Now open the trunk. Let me see what you're hiding." Alicia felt a wave of anger rise within her. She couldn't stand it anymore. She wasn't going to let this officer control her simply because of her skin color and the car she drove. This couldn't happen, but she knew she couldn't lose her temper either. She had to handle this more wisely. "No, I'm not opening the trunk," Alicia said, her voice firmer than before. "You don't have the right to ask me to do that without legal cause." Officer Scott shot Alicia a challenging look. "You don't get to teach me the law. Let me tell you, you're a suspect. You've been parked here too long without a valid reason. I can feel that you're hiding something in that car." Alicia could feel the tension growing in the air. Every word from the officer wasn't about seeking justice. It was about exerting control. Alicia realized that this wasn't a routine check. It was an abuse of power. She continued to stay calm, but every word from the officer was like a small flame burning away her patience. "You can't do this," Alicia said, gripping the steering wheel, feeling the air getting thicker. "You have no legal cause to search me. If you had a reason, you'd need a warrant." Officer Scott stood still for a moment, as if considering her options. Then she smirked and stepped closer to Alicia's car, looking her directly in the eyes. "Well, if you don't open the trunk right now, I'll have a reason to suspect you, and I'll make you cooperate. You'll suffer the consequences." The tension reached a breaking point. Alicia felt like she was staring down an inescapable situation if she didn't act. She realized the officer wouldn't stop. It wasn't just racial profiling anymore. This officer was deliberately using her power to force Alicia into a corner, creating a scenario she couldn't easily get out of. Alicia decided she wouldn't back down. "You have no legal cause to do this. You won't find anything in my car." Alicia's voice was firm, but deep down, she knew what she needed to do next. Alicia felt the tension building inside her. Every word from Officer Scott was a direct blow to her freedom and rights. It wasn't just racial profiling. This officer was clearly trying to manipulate the situation to bring her down. Officer Scott didn't wait for Alicia to respond. She turned her back and walked toward the trunk of the car, acting as if she had already decided to do something without Alicia's consent. She turned back around, her eyes full of challenge. "I told you you're hiding something in this car. If you don't open the trunk right now, I'll find a way to get whatever it is, even if I have to search you." Alicia felt like a criminal, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. That's the feeling Officer Scott was trying to create, to make her feel guilty without any evidence. Alicia exhaled, knowing she had to stand her ground or everything would get much worse. "No, you can't do that," Alicia said, her voice steady but filled with tension. "You have no legal reason to search me. This is my privacy." She knew if she didn't confront this right now, this officer wouldn't stop. Officer Scott scoffed and walked up to the car door, still not taking her eyes off Alicia. "Privacy? What right do you think you have in this situation?" she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I don't need a warrant to search a criminal. You've been parked here for too long, texting with no reasonable excuse, and now I'm going to check what you're hiding. You think you can just sit in this car and not be suspected?" Alicia felt surrounded. She hadn't done anything wrong, but this officer was intentionally accusing her. The feeling of injustice flooded Alicia's heart, but she knew she had to stay calm. She couldn't let herself get caught in this officer's power game. "No," Alicia said firmly, "you can't search me without legal cause. You don't have a warrant, you don't have evidence. And if you want to search, you need to follow the proper procedure." Alicia stared into Officer Scott's eyes, feeling the challenge in the air. The officer didn't listen. She stood still, her gaze fixed on Alicia. "You don't get it, do you? You can act like you're innocent, but I can feel that you're hiding something in this car. If you don't open the trunk right now, I'll do whatever it takes to get it." The atmosphere grew suffocating. Alicia could feel the anger coming from the officer. She realized she was facing a cop who wasn't just racially profiling her. She was abusing her power to pressure Alicia. This officer didn't just want to check her car. She wanted to violate her privacy and her rights simply because she was black. Alicia felt like everything was slipping out of control. She began to feel the suffocating sensation of oppression, a feeling she could no longer accept. She couldn't let this happen. Fine, Alicia said, her patience wearing thin. You want a search? I can't just sit here and endure this abuse. But before she could say more, Officer Scott continued to threaten. You don't have a voice here. If you don't cooperate, I'll have to conduct a body search. Open the door right now and I won't ask you again. Alicia felt every muscle in her body tense. Not only was the officer trying to search her car, now she wanted to search her body. It felt like a slap to every basic right she was supposed to have. She couldn't stand it any longer. Alicia stood firm in her car, but she could feel the tension in the air growing thicker. Officer Scott continued to press harder, each word she said like a blow to Alicia's spirit and willpower. But Alicia knew that if she didn't stand up to this, things would only get worse. All right, you want to search my body? Alicia said coldly, trying to remain calm. If you want to search, you can do it the proper way. Officer Scott had no intention of following the proper procedure. Instead, she just scoffed and took a step closer. You think you can outsmart me? She said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I don't need a warrant. I already told you you're hiding something in this car, and I will find it. I have the right to search everything in this car, including your body. Alicia felt something was terribly wrong, a cold chill running down her spine. She looked into Officer Scott's eyes, recognizing the determination and the threat in them. Officer Scott was about to do something wrong, something that would never happen if she were acting within the boundaries of the law. Suddenly, Officer Scott didn't just stand there waiting. She quickly glanced toward the back door of the Mercedes, then turned back to look at Alicia with a self-satisfied expression. Well then, let me give you a hand, she said. The officer bent down near the car window and suddenly shoved a bag of cocaine into Alicia's bag. Alicia couldn't believe her eyes. She felt her heart race as Officer Scott stood up, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Congratulations! Now you're in possession of cocaine, the officer said, her voice full of mockery. You're facing at least 5 years in prison. Open the trunk and come with me now. Alicia couldn't believe what had just happened. This officer wasn't just abusing her power. She had deliberately planted drugs on her to falsely accuse her. A wave of shock and anger surged inside Alicia. She had been tricked, but Alicia knew she couldn't let herself fall into this trap without doing something. Who would believe that you did this? Alicia asked, her voice shaking with fury. You just planted drugs on me so you could accuse me? Officer Scott sneered, her voice cold and dismissive. Who do you think they'll believe, you or me? You're a criminal trying to make excuses. You have no way out, and I'm going to ruin your life. Alicia could feel her body tighten, her heart pounding in her chest, but she couldn't let this officer win. She sighed, looking straight at Officer Scott. You can do whatever you want, but there's one thing you don't know. I'm not just anyone, and I'm not going to let you ruin my life. Alicia could feel the blood boiling in her veins. Everything around her seemed to be spinning. But in that moment, she focused all her energy on the reality she was facing. This officer wasn't just falsely accusing her. She was doing everything she could to trap her in a legal mess. The shock and anger almost made it hard to think clearly, but Alicia knew she had to act. Officer Scott still stood there, smug and self-assured. She looked at Alicia with a victorious gaze, her voice casual. Now you're a criminal. I'll report this to my superiors, and you'll be spending a long time in prison for drug possession. While this officer was lost in her power game, Alicia took a deep breath to calm the rising anger inside her. She couldn't let this officer turn her life into a joke. She had the right to be protected, and she wouldn't let anyone abuse their power to destroy her life. As Officer Scott continued talking about the accusations, Alicia suddenly sneered, You think anyone is going to believe you? You're just a cop abusing your power. She said, then quickly pulled out her badge, slamming it down on the dashboard. You don't know who I am. The officer stopped talking. Her eyes widened. What? She asked, her voice now tinged with uncertainty. You. Who are you? Alicia stood up straight without hesitation. I'm Alicia Turner, Captain of Internal Affairs. I'm investigating corruption within your police department. She looked into Officer Scott's eyes, unflinching. And you're my next target. Officer Scott's eyes widened, and her mind seemed to spin. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Alicia wasn't just some ordinary woman. She had power far beyond what this officer could have imagined. This was no longer a situation she could control. I'm sure you didn't know, but I've been assigned to clean up the corruption in this department, Alicia continued, her voice unshaken. You've been on my radar since I started. You just helped me complete my investigation. The officer stood motionless, the smugness that had once defined her fading into fear and confusion. She began to take a step back, unsure of what to say or do. She had made a huge mistake. Alicia pulled out her phone and immediately opened the recording app. You're going to be investigated, Alicia said, her voice leaving no room for doubt. Everything you've done has been recorded, and I'm sending it all to Internal Affairs. Your actions will be exposed. Officer Scott couldn't speak anymore. She shook her head and began to resist. No, this can't be happening. You can't do this. I'm a cop. They won't believe you. Alicia just smiled, her voice calm but resolute. It's all been recorded. Not just me, but also the cameras in my car and the body cam on you. There's no way to deny the evidence. She pressed send, and just a second later, Alicia received a notification from Internal Affairs. She didn't say another word, simply staring at Officer Scott with unwavering resolve. You've destroyed yourself, Alicia said, without a trace of sympathy. All you've done is try to oppress an innocent person because you thought you had power. But today, you're going to pay the price. Officer Scott stood frozen, unable to speak. She still hadn't fully grasped that she had been exposed. The smug look she had initially worn had now shifted to one of complete confusion. She started backing away slowly, unable to make eye contact with Alicia, and the fear began to overtake her entire body. Alicia didn't give this officer a chance to escape. She stepped out of the car, maintaining her composure but exuding authority. I warned you, not only have you abused your power, but you're also hurting yourself, Alicia said, her voice full of challenge and resolve. Officer Scott was flustered, trying to regain her composure. You can't do this. You can't make me lose my job. You can't destroy me just because of these accusations. She raised her voice, clearly scared. Alicia didn't let her off the hook. She immediately pulled out her phone, reopened the recording app, and started recording a video. She turned on her car's camera and even captured Officer Scott's body cam, all of it recording the entire confrontation. Don't worry, Alicia said coolly. Everything you've done is documented, and now you won't be able to deny it. Internal Affairs won't let you get away with this. Officer Scott looked at Alicia, then turned away, her hands shaking as she desperately searched for an escape. She knew she had done wrong, and now the truth could not be undone. Everything had been recorded. She couldn't continue hiding her actions anymore. Alicia pressed on, not giving the officer a chance to argue. You think you can destroy my life by planting drugs on me and falsely accusing me? You've ruined yourself, Officer Scott. A wave of helplessness rose within Officer Scott. She knew there was no escaping the consequences anymore. Being exposed was just a matter of time. She took another step back, looking at Alicia with wide, fearful eyes. You can't do this. They won't believe you. Alicia smiled and took a step closer to the officer. Everything will be reviewed. You've already placed yourself on the list of those who will be held accountable. She looked directly at the officer, knowing the power had now completely shifted to her. Suddenly, Alicia turned around, took her phone again, and dialed Internal Affairs. Internal Affairs, I need immediate support. I've just caught an officer abusing her power and deliberately setting me up. This needs to be investigated right away. Officer Scott could no longer deny it. Everything was clear now. She had gone too far, and now everything was irreparable. Fear overwhelmed her, and she knew her career was over. The police car, the uniform, none of it meant anything anymore. All she had left was the collapse of her own life. The officer stood still, unable to look at Alicia anymore. This officer was no longer someone with power. All the smugness and arrogance she had displayed earlier had evaporated in an instant. She had been fully exposed, and now all that remained was fear. There was no way out. Alicia looked at her, calm but filled with authority. You think you can ruin my life with these accusations, but now you're the one who has to pay. You brought this on yourself, Officer Scott. Officer Scott remained standing, her face pale. She couldn't say anything, only looked at Alicia with worried eyes. She knew everything she had done had been recorded, from the moment she planted cocaine on Alicia to her abuse of power during the entire check. Alicia continued, showing no mercy. You haven't just made a professional mistake. You're part of a corrupt system, a system I've been tasked to clean up. The officer tried to resist, but Alicia didn't allow her any chance. You can try to blame me, but you can't change the truth. You've destroyed your own career with these wrongful actions. No one is going to believe you anymore. Everything has been recorded and will be filed. Suddenly, Alicia turned and took out her phone, opening the recording app. I've recorded everything, Officer Scott. You've ruined your own career, not just me, but also all the cameras around here, and the videos and audio will be sent to Internal Affairs right now. Every action of yours has been clearly recorded. If Officer Scott could only shake her head, her confidence gone. She realized that there was no way back. The cameras in Alicia's car, her body cam, along with the recordings, were enough to expose this officer's misconduct. She had completely failed. Alicia hadn't just helped herself get out of this situation, but she had also provided Internal Affairs with the evidence needed to bring Officer Scott into an investigation. You might be fired today. For sure, you'll face severe penalties from Internal Affairs and the justice system, Alicia said, her voice showing no sympathy. You thought you could deceive me and the authorities, but now you're just digging your own grave. Officer Scott looked at Alicia one last time, then turned away, speechless. The complete feeling of failure overwhelmed her. All the confidence and power she had once had now disappeared, leaving only shame and fear of the consequences that were about to come. Officer Scott stood there, like a shadow of herself. From a police officer with power, she had become the one exposed. Her entire wrongdoing laid bare before Alicia, and now before Internal Affairs. Alicia didn't say another word. She just emphasized one important point. Everything you've done will be filed, Officer Scott. I'm not just protecting myself, I'm putting you under an official investigation. Alicia's voice was cold but certain. Justice will be served, and you will pay for what you've done. Officer Scott had no defense left. She lowered her head, unable to meet Alicia's gaze, and had no words to counter. The feeling of guilt and utter failure consumed her. All her wrongdoings were now exposed clearly. Not just Alicia, but the authorities would begin their investigation, and now there was no escape from the consequences. Alicia didn't wait any longer. She turned back to her Mercedes and grabbed her phone. She opened a special app and called Internal Affairs. This is Alicia Turner, Captain of Internal Affairs. I'm reporting an abuse of power by Officer Rachel Scott. She just planted drugs on me and made false accusations. All the evidence has been recorded. She continued to explain the situation, leaving out no detail. After reporting to Internal Affairs, Alicia emphasized, "Send someone here immediately to handle this. Officer Scott needs to be held accountable for her actions." A long pause passed, but Alicia felt no regret. She had done the right thing. Everything had been recorded, from the cameras in her car to Officer Scott's body cam, from the audio recording of the conversation to the video of this officer's actions. There was no longer any room for denial. Suddenly, Officer Scott stepped closer, her hands shaking, still unable to accept that she had completely failed. She tried to say something, but her words were lost in the silence. Alicia turned back around, her gaze sharp and commanding. "You won't be able to escape what you've done," she said, her voice stern. "Don't think that your badge or uniform can hide the truth. Justice will prevail, and you will face the consequences." Internal Affairs immediately sent an investigation team. Every step they took as they entered the area was filled with seriousness, every word filled with authority. Officer Scott was taken away, and shortly after, she was placed in custody as Internal Affairs began their investigation. All of her actions, from planting drugs on Alicia to her racial profiling, were now clearly exposed.